Welcome, Jenn Chrisman, to Amp It Up. I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. This is so fun.
Okay, you guys that are listening, I want you to hear Jen's story because she's amazing and I want her to share it. But what's so cool and what's so crazy is I went to high school with Jenn, right? Like
Yeah,
just high school, not
just high
elementary. We
school.
went to different elementary schools. So Jenn and I both were raised in Los Angeles. We both went to Beverly Hills High School, but I was not in the Beverly Hills School District. I always say I was the Andrea Zuckerman.
Oh, that's right. But you were like you were like in the hills, right?
I was close. Yeah, we ended up
Yeah.
moving to the hills, to like the Hollywood Hills. But at the beginning, I was very much in like Miracle Mile. And it felt very, if you know LA, like if you're not in the Beverly Hills, well, at least the way I looked at it growing up, I always felt less than. I always felt like I was going to school with all these like super rich kids and I was not one of them. Did you have that experience? I
Oh,
don't even know what your experience was.
yeah. I didn't realize that that was your experience because that was very much my experience. And I always said that I lived in the slums of Beverly Hills because when we moved to Beverly Hills, so I we were in sixth grade when I moved to Beverly Hills, and my mom was a single mom and very much in her addiction and
Mm.
having a hard time keeping a job. And we only moved there because she was following a guy,
Oh my
but
God.
we literally lived on the last street of Beverly Hills. Like we were right on the border, the very last street of Beverly Hills.
Which means like I mean, for all intensive purposes, it's a very nice neighborhood still, probably. But you lived like what people deemed as like kind of the ghetto of Beverly Hills, right?
Yeah, and I know it sounds ridiculous when we're talking about it because you're still like you said, it's still a nice neighborhood. It's still Beverly Hills. It's, the zip code, even though it was 90211 and not 90210. But there very much was a sense and a feeling that I had no business being
Mm,
there and feeling so separate and so less than,
mm,
because of the just the nature and the culture of the environment that it was.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was something that we created for ourselves. And it's funny because we were friends. We were never like besties, but we spent a lot of time together, like in
Yeah,
social settings.
yeah,
Although I blocked out a lot of high school, like I kind of don't remember a lot, but
same.
I don't know if it was the marijuana that I was smoking at the time or what, but I was just like, I blocked a lot of it out and it wasn't a very happy time for me. Like, I don't remember looking at high school and being like, that was the best years of my life. It really wasn't. But it's funny that we didn't know that we both had the same kind of like experience. We were both going through it. And, it's just an interesting take that like we both for me, and this is something that I want to kind of get into with you after you share kind of what you do. And I'm sure, I want to get more of a sense of who you are, but I want to talk on, this idea of envy and like
Mm,
jealousy and growing up feeling less than and how that's kind of translated into my life now as an entrepreneur. But first of all, Jenn, thank you so much for being here. So why don't you just kind of give everyone an idea of what you do and who you are in this world?
yeah, so my name is Dr. Jenn Chrisman, and I am formally a psychologist. I spent more than a decade practicing as a licensed clinical psychologist, and through many years of being in my own healing and going through my own expansion journey, I realized that the field and working operating as a therapist wasn't really where my calling was. I'm now currently working as a more of a life coach, a mentor, and a teacher for really high achieving women. I do a lot of work with women who I say, like, we've checked all the boxes, right? I did all the things, I did everything that I was told I was supposed to do to live a happy and fulfilled life. And there's still something missing.
Mm,
And, that was my own journey, going through, I trying to overcompensate for the childhood and what I felt was missing. I was in a perpetual state of achieving and performing and doing the things. I put myself through college. I went to grad school and got a doctorate. I built a successful business. I got married. I had kids. Like I checked every box. And there was a piece that was missing for me. And that's really the work that I enjoy doing now is supporting other women who come to that point and that realization in their own lives because
Mhm.
we I think as a society we are conditioned to believe that the more we do, the more success we'll have, and then therefore the happier we'll be. And what ends up happening is we end up frustrated, we end up exhausted, we end up unfulfilled because we're so busy being and doing who we think we're supposed to be rather than honoring the truth of who we really are.
Oh my gosh, there's so many good things there that I could like go off on 100 tangents, but the idea of success being a moving goal, it's not
Mm,
something that like I feel so many of us, well, let's be honest. Let's take me for an example, right? It's one of those things where I always that if I did this, I get this. If I have this, I will be this. If I make this amount of money, it will turn into this. And the truth is, it's never like it is kind of it's like filling in a colander of water. I mean, there's constantly like I need to keep filling.
yeah.
It never really feels full. So what like is that a normal human feeling that like
Yeah.
there's
So
always something missing?
absolute. Well, yes, and there's an aspect of it that is absolutely human nature. And this we're designed to continually be progressing and to be continually growing. And so there is this on the one hand there's this aspect of you set a goal for yourself, you hit the goal, you take a moment, for many of us that moment is incredibly short-lived, to recognize that we achieved the goal, and then we set the next goal, right? What's next? And to a certain extent this is good, right? This is supporting us because it's keeping us growing, it's keeping us stretching, and you know what they say, if you're not growing you're dying.
Mm,
So there is that aspect. And I love working with the nuances and the paradox that comes with the human experience. So on the one hand we have this very healthy, very normal, very um, adaptive function of moving the goals and continuing to expand the goals, but there's this other piece too, which is kind of where the nuance is, and it's the energy behind the goal setting. And as long as we are looking for this thing outside of ourselves to be what determines our worthiness, that's when we end up in this perpetual state of never enough. And
mhm.
that's that point where these goals become these outside barometers of my worthiness. And now my worth is attached. My worth is not attached to inherently who I am. The worth becomes attached to how much money am I making? And because it's based on something outside of myself, it'll never be enough.
It will never be enough.
Does that make sense? Kind of like
Yes.
holding the
So
difference between those two places.
yeah, so it's essentially looking inward, filling in
Yeah.
those holes or those gaps inside of you so
Yeah.
that wherever you live, so that however much money you make, so that however many gigs you book or clients you have, it's not really dependent on that.
Yeah, it's this like very sweet spot that we find where that those goals become about fulfillment rather than trying to prove something, right?
Mm,
Or trying to like feel good about ourselves, right? I can feel good about myself in the pursuit of rather than the actual accomplishment, right? And that's kind of the cliches, which cliches are cliches for a reason, but
yeah.
you find, it's the journey, not the destination. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say like is a, tangible kind of go-to way to start discovering how to fix this? If someone comes to you and you said you work with high achieving women, what does that mean? Women that
Yeah.
are successful technically, like by all intensive purposes.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that question, and then I want to go back to something you just said.
Yeah.
So, the high achieving, it's these women, right? Like the you and I's of the world who
Mm,
have we've done it all. Like I checked every box you told me to check. I have the family, I have the kids. We tend to be the type A's, we tend to be the overachievers, we tend to be, it's never good enough, kind of that energy. But I won't like, where to start. And you said something that I think is a really important place to start, because you said, where do we start to fix this?
Mm.
And I think this is a really important piece around the language and the whole paradigm that we're operating in, of shifting from a mindset and an operating system that tells us we're broken and we have something to fix. So, right away out the gates, there is a base foundation of acceptance and compassion that we get to invite into our experience, because the reality is we live in a world that's constantly telling us
Mm.
we're not good enough, or this needs to be fixed, or we have to do that.
Yeah.
And so being really mindful, even with the language that we're using to talk about this process, it's a way of being, which is hard because so many of us operate and we want a to-do list, right? Tell me what to do. How do I do this? And it always comes back to, who am I being? And so in that, along those lines, we then, okay, who am I being as I'm even thinking about this journey and this road that I'm going to take? Am I being
Mhm.
a woman of grace and compassion, or am I being a dictator who, buries boot camp and, do this and faster and quicker and harder? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So, well, no, I mean, it's all like such a good way to look at it. But I think what happens is and a lot of my audience, I think, is this way too, because we always attract people that are kind of similar to us, right? So I'm, that typical Enneagram 3, a doer, a overachiever. I wake up
Mhm.
early. I work out every day. I am a workaholic. I want to also make sure that I get the laundry done and the dishes done and the cleaning. I can't go to bed until da, da, da. And my kids, it's like a little controlling. Like I've got to make sure that everyone's doing
Mm.
whatever. That's who I am. And I've kind of learned how to just accept that that makes me happy. This feeling of like being in movement, but at the same time, it's not sustainable. And so there's like a lot of days. And this is kind of how we started this conversation, where especially during that break, right? Like the holiday break, when everything is slowing down and you don't really have anything to do, right? COVID was crazy. And so we were just kind of quarantining inside of our house, trying to stay away from it. And there was no work to be done. And it was raining. And all of a sudden I was like, I feel freaking depressed. Like I don't like this feeling of rest and everything.
Yeah.
So do you ever struggle with that? Is that something that you work with a lot of these women?
Yeah, so I inherently, the nature of who I am actually is sort of the opposite. I'm kind of on the other pole of this, from where you are. Of like, I'm very much like almost to a fault sometimes, like in my feminine, and kind of like, the Pisces and the dreamer, and I can spend an obscene amount of time literally sitting and doing nothing.
Wow.
And but this is the so here's where, again, like, we work with nuances and all of the different dynamics, but this is about finding balance and finding right relationship. And inherently within everything in the natural world, nature is constantly seeking balance.
Mm.
And within each of us, we have these feminine and masculine qualities, which, this is nothing to do with like gender norms or dynamics or anything like that. It has to do with, kind of thinking about masculine tendencies being the structure, being the doing, being, it's that get up and get things done and handle it. Feminine is flow. Feminine is
Feeling.
it's relaxation, it's receiving, it's, when it's out of balance, it can be chaos, right? Whereas when the masculine is out of balance, it can be rigidity. And so with everything in life, we have both of these, it's a continuum, and we have the full spectrum within us. And we're always needing to seek and find, how do I find right relationship? And if we spend too much time on any end of the continuum, in anything in our life, we run the risk of being out of balance and therefore having unhealthy qualities, dynamics, behaviors, consequences showing up in life. And so then it's about, like we were talking about, and when you were in that place over the holidays of like, oh, I'm kind of depressed, like everything I know. And it's like, okay, how can you lean more fully into some of these feminine qualities to balance a little bit of the masculine energy? Because if you're just go, 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 go all of the time, it's not sustainable.
Mm-mm.
Not for you and not for anybody.
Mm-mm.
Eventually you're going to hit a wall. Eventually you're going to burn out. Eventually you're going to come to a point where, life says, nope, we're done with that. And then you're left with like, I don't know what to do with myself because I don't have that right relationship to be able to balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it comes from a place of I can't decide if it's within me or it's like do I actually feel that this doesn't feel good to rest?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's the truth. I actually enjoy the rest. I enjoy laying in bed during the middle of the day and watching TV. That was my favorite thing to do growing up, right? I don't
Yeah.
allow myself to do it because I'm very judgmental on myself. Am I
Yeah.
moving my body enough? Am I burning the calories? Am I getting the steps in? I have 15 things that need to get done right now. Why aren't I doing them? So, like I'll fall apart if they don't get done. So let me just, instead of just laying in bed and watching Emily in Paris, let me organize my dresser in my closet while I watch Emily in Paris.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
so I don't know if it's me or if it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you do know, and it does sound like it's like there's an aspect of it that is a coping mechanism,
Mm.
which I think is the case for so many of us. Especially as women, there is, I think that, um, men have their own conditioning and expectations that happen, and women have one also. But there's an aspect of um, society being a patriarchal society and
Mm.
society being a masculine society, right? We live in a culture that puts pressures and demands and 9 to 5 operating hours, and there is this over glorification of achievements and doing and get things done. And so then as women we are expected to operate in this paradigm. And so there's this conditioning that happens, right? We're being told this is who we're supposed to be, this is what it's supposed to look like, and then on top of whatever personal stories we bring to it as well.
Well, like doing nothing is lazy.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
Doing nothing is unproductive. Doing
Mm-hmm.
nothing like and here's the, honest truth, which I'm never really not honest, especially with my community and my podcast and whatever. But when I see my husband chilling on a Sunday, watching a game, or I see my kids like chilling after their crazy long week playing iPad, like sometimes it bothers me. It like puts me in a place of, I don't know, judgment. Like I judge them.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's it. Like I'm projecting.
So this is where like we get into like shadow work, right?
Mm.
Because the shadow is really any aspect of ourself that we have suppressed. Like we literally we dissociate from it and we tuck it away into the darkness, and we nope, that's not me. And we can look anytime we're triggered in our lives, and we get in and we notice like, oh, that person bugs me, I'm feeling really judgmental. Almost always we can take it back to a shadow,
Mm.
right? They are reflecting a disowned part of you, right? That part of you that wants to be quote unquote lazy.
So when okay, so if I'm following someone online, just say, I'm not thinking of anyone specific, but I'm just saying, like, if there's someone that I follow online that annoys me,
Uh-huh.
it's something probably within me.
Usually, and it, it's not so like cut and dry black. Nothing in life is really very black and white. Um, but there's always, a few different things that we can play around with, because sometimes, um, I guess if you have an example, we can kind of play with it. Doesn't have you don't have to name names, but like, what
Well,
is
like,
it
what
that's
if there's
annoying you?
someone out there that is constantly, and like I said, I'm not thinking specifically, but this is something that I see in a lot of coaches, which I don't like, which is like always shouting out how much money they're making. Like it's
Mm,
always a thing. And I
hmm.
don't know about you, Jen, but like with me, my one envy place comes with money. That's growing
Yeah,
up this way. And still to this day, like when I have friends that have a lot of money, I feel it triggers something within me. So maybe that's what it is. It's like that.
yeah,
Cause I'm like, why do we feel like that means you're good because of how much money you make?
yeah. So here's where my first thought is, the work for you, if you will. It sounds like that little girl who felt like she wasn't good enough is the
Mm,
one who's getting triggered, right? And so the reaction, rather than moving into to comforting and soothing and like the real energy of what healing actually is, right? We kind of like suppress, like quiet, you tuck back there, and we kind of get on our self-righteous high horse, right? And we go into our judgment.
wow.
And but the trigger is really the younger wounded aspect of ourselves, who's needing some softness, who's needing some loving reassurance.
And so, like, what would you say I should do in that case? Or if anyone out there is listening and someone, maybe body issues trigger them, maybe relationships trigger them, financial, whatever. What's the first
Yeah.
step?
Yeah. So the first step for me is always a breath, like really taking a moment to just take a breath in that space.
As I'm
And so
taking
the
like a very deep breath right now.
Yeah, just like really letting yourself uh, coming into your body and into a place of stillness, because I find that it's in the stillness where we get to actually make a choice in what direction we want to go. So a lot of the work that I do is inner child and reparenting,
Mm,
and everything is really rooted in how do I create a new relationship with myself in this moment, and doing that from moment to moment. So in a situation where I'm online, I'm scrolling, and I'm feeling myself get triggered, we have choices, and most of us, we don't allow ourselves permission to really tune in to what is it that I'm actually feeling right now. And so we either stay stuck in the judgment and we're like, oh, she's so gross, or she's so this, or she's so that. I can't believe she did that.
mm.
And we stay in that, which is kind of a really like, even as I'm saying it, like my shoulders go up, my body language, right? Like everything kind of changes. There's a lot of constriction that happens in that space. Or the other thing that we might do is judge ourselves for being judgmental, right? And like, you shouldn't judge them. Like you're so mean. And like, that's not, you're supposed to like think positive and women supporting women. And now, but you're not doing that right. So no, I've
Yeah.
created this cycle where I'm wrong. And so the work that I do is, again, if I take a breath and I take a moment, I come into center and I look at, well, what's really happening here? And if I can identify what part of me is triggered, and this is a big part of the work that I do too, is allowing for the complexity of the human experience, right? We want so much to minimize our experiences and to make ourselves one dimensional. But that's not how the human experience is. We are complex, we are dynamic, we have different parts of ourselves. And I have this whole analogy that I use, which is the passengers on our bus. And um, you know so each one of us, I imagine, like we're all driving our own bus down this road of life, and along this road we pick up different passengers, and these passengers are different aspects of ourselves. And they might be developmental milestones, they might be big life events that happen. But the idea is that along this journey, on this drive, these different passengers get on.
Mm.
And once the passengers get on the bus, they're on the bus for life. And what happens is that these different passengers try and get in our driver's seat.
Hmm.
And the work that we then do is, one, identifying who are my passengers. And this is similar to like archetypes.
Mhm.
And, we can think about it in different ways. But who are my passengers? And then what does it look like when these passengers are driving? So, for
Mm.
example, like I'll use myself. A few of my passengers that I have, um, I have a 2-year old who is very sweet and very innocent, but already starting to become aware of, she's painfully shy because she's got some fear already, knowing that her life isn't stable.
Mm.
I have a 4-year-old who is homeless for the first time, and unsure of, where her parents are and what's happening. I have a 10-year-old whose dad just committed suicide,
Mm.
and she's feeling really insecure and already at that point of thinking, if only I was prettier or smarter or thinner, maybe he would have stayed. I have a teenager who is has a chip on her shoulder and kind of just wants to go through the world with a giant F you. I have my highest self on this bus, right? So you can see like we each have these different aspects of
Wow.
ourselves. And again, the idea is what does it look like when this one's driving my bus? Right? So you have an aspect, a passenger who feels less than in regards to how much money she has. And you can play around with how old is she really? And once we like and when we know that too, we can also start to understand like more of the complexities and the depth of these passengers and how do they feel about themselves? What do they think about the world as a whole? What are they really needing
Mm.
in life?
Mm.
And when we use our breath and we bring attention and awareness to ourselves in these given moments, we start to see and we start to look. It's like, oh, my 5-year-old just got in the driver's seat. That's not good, and again, we create a new relationship.
Yeah.
And most of us, what we want to do is get frustrated and we get angry with ourselves. We're like, like, can't you just be done with this already? And we want to like kick these passengers off, but that's not what we're doing. We're working to create a new relationship.
Yeah.
So then it's in that space of taking a breath and like, okay, what's really going on? Who's really triggered? What do I really need?
Mm.
Oh, that part of myself needs some loving reassurance. There's
Mm.
there's a sense, and I do a lot of work with the body, because we want to think and we want to talk about everything, but healing doesn't happen at an
Yeah.
intellectual level. It happens at a felt
Yeah.
level. And so then
Mm.
it's like tuning into my body, like what does it feel like to genuinely just hold myself with compassion and understanding for a moment. And of course, you got triggered by that because
Mm.
there's this sweet little girl who doesn't feel like she's enough in the world.
Yeah.
And it's such a different model for so many of us who are like constantly in this cycle of go, 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 do, do. And then to stop and breathe and hold and love and like actually give ourselves what it is that we really need is totally, a whole new paradigm.
Mm.
I just threw a lot at you.
I know, but I love it all. It's like so interesting. And it's, this inner work and this kind of mental and emotional work is something that we don't focus on as entrepreneurs. We're focused on, building our offer suite and
Hmm.
and growing on social media and gaining exposure and getting, clients. We're not focused on what does it really mean and what kind of feelings are these bringing up. And so
Yeah.
for anyone that wants to like go deeper in this and they're liking what they're hearing, how do you work with people? You work one-on-one? Do you have group programs or
Yeah.
what is it?
Yes. Yes. All of the above. So it's interesting because it's a huge part of what I teach and uh, again, the foundation that I work from, which is really you can do all of the things, right? You can wake up at 5 a.m., you can get on the Peloton, you can drink your green juice,
Are
you
you
can,
calling me out right now? Other than the green juice, everything pretty much felt like me. Okay, go
right? Like
on.
you can do all the things and still walk through this world with a sense of agitation or discomfort, unhappiness, um, because it's not about what you're doing, it's really about who you're being.
Mm.
And so I always said I'm in the business of becoming. And, you know, because I do work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I have a lot of coaches as my clients they're frustrated, they're stuck, they're because they're so focused on systems. They're so
Yeah.
focused
Structure,
on,
systems, do this, do this, do that, do this.
yes, build the email funnel, launch in this way, like do all the things. And I'm like, you know, and I am, you, like we said, like you might find me on Instagram, probably not, because
Well, it's
I'm
just not like the
very,
primary focus for you, right? There's
it's,
so many other
and,
ways.
and I have an incredibly successful business
Yeah.
because it's all focused on the energy
Mm.
and being in the energy and the flow of abundance and being able to receive and detaching my my worth and my value from the things that I do and attaching all of it to the person that I am. I had a mentor one time who told me to, he said, focus 3 times as much on your character as you do on what you actually do. And you know, I've taken that and I've ran with it. So yeah, so when I'm working with clients, I have one-on-one, which is a little bit. I don't take on a lot of clients because I give a lot in it. Again, it's not just you know, we're not just talking about things and what are you going to do. There's a lot of I love the work that I do one-on-one because I get to um, you know, I get to go so deep into a loving relationship. I really do. At the core of everything I do, I believe that that's what we all really need, is to feel loved and held and unconditionally accepted. Um, and so I pour a lot into that
Yeah.
container. So I have that. And then I also have, I do have a 12-week course called the Embodied Life Academy, which is more of, it's a blueprint, it's a roadmap. It's a lot of teaching. It's very sort of like traditional, um, like understanding the concepts at a deep level and creating a bridge. How do we move from knowing these concepts to embodying and living these concepts?
Mm.
And then I also have a monthly membership that is breath work and hypnosis, guided meditations, and I also do EFT,
Oh, so
which
cool.
is tapping, because again, the healing happens in the energetic body. The healing doesn't happen in our intellectual minds. And again, we as you know, intellectual, successful, high achieving women tend to put way too much focus on mindset work.
Mm.
And mindset is finite. It's very superficial. It's only gonna take you so far. And I'm sure we've all been in this situation, and we know, and it's the most frustrating place to be, where you're like, I know this, like
I
I know
know this, but why
why.
it's not happening.
I know why I do what I do. I know what I should be doing. I can tell you from here until, you know, next Sunday why I am the way that I am, and nothing changes.
Yeah. So
Because
knowing the why is just like one piece of it, right? There's got to be so much more.
insight alone does not bring about change. And we put so much focus and emphasis on insight, but the change has to happen at the energetic level. So we
Yeah.
have to move from, you know, we start with the awareness, that's the first piece, but then we have to move into actual subconscious reprogramming, and all of that happens on an energetic level. So I do a lot of breath work, different breathing practices for different things, and all that's in the monthly membership. So we come together twice a month for a live group coaching call, a breath work session, and then there's a database that I have of just, you know, 5 to 10 minute breathing activities that you can do to, you know, start your morning, or you know, immunity building breath work, all of the
Sure.
different things. Yeah.
So if any of you guys that are listening here, you know, I touch on all kinds of topics on this podcast. You know, most of the time it's like an entrepreneur's journey, or we talk specifically on like exactly what we talked about, like strategy, right? Like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But this is the real work. This is the hard work, right? Like the other stuff is easy. This is the hard work, which is why so many of us are hesitant to do it. But I highly suggest that we all kind of focus more on this in 2022. Jenn, where do people find you?
So even though I don't always post, I am always actually on Instagram
As a consumer?
as a consumer. And it's funny because for this is where like, right, I'm like, so I spend a lot of time in my feminine and I am working on balancing it out by creating more structures and systems because I do have a lot to say. But you can find me on Instagram at Dr.Jenn with two N's, Chrisman.
Yes. And all her links will be in the show notes. And she has a website with more information. And it's just so lovely to connect with you again after so many years, but also just to hear your story. I mean, like I just
Mm,
got a little glimpse of it right now, but whoa, right? Growing up
mm,
that way, and to see how you've kind of been able to use it all and help others with it. And I think so many of us do that in our own worlds, which is taking elements of our own journey, our own stories, our own fails and flaws and struggles, and helping others through it.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
so
always say
beautiful.
that we are our best tool,
Yeah.
and the more attuned we are within ourselves, the more capacity we have to help and support others.
Yeah. I love it. Aw, Jenn, it was so good to connect with you and everyone. You guys, as if you're following along, make sure to hit up Jenn on Instagram and force her to
Please
post more.
do. Yeah, please
Um,
do. I would love that.
and we'll find a way to work together, I think, because
I
it's
think so
it's
too.
so cool to chat with you. Thank
Yeah,
you
I think it would be
so
really great to do
much.
the yin and the yang.
Oh my God, right? I'm masculine, you're feminine. Let's meet.
There you go.
Um, thanks, Jenn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.